I need to tell you a pretty awful story. My clients paid for long-term care insurance for decades, starting in their 50s, and they're now in their 80s. They started looking at assisted living communities, evaluated the ones that they liked, picked one, sold most of their stuff at an estate sale, packed up the moving van, moved into the new community, had to pay for it out of pocket for 90 days before their claim could be processed for long-term care insurance. And then after they did all of this stuff, their claim was denied. They were so panicked, so upset, so angry. Can they really do that? And unfortunately, the answer was yes. I was so livid on their behalf because my clients hadn't done anything wrong. In fact, they had done everything right. They had planned ahead. They knew that this day was going to come, which is why they took out the long-term care insurance policy 30 years ago in the first place. They knew that they would eventually need it. But it's an insurance policy, just like any other. It comes with terms and conditions. If this, then that, all of the clauses that they put in there, because let's face it, insurance companies don't typically want to pay out any insurance claims. They would rather you keep paying your premiums, and they never pay out anything. Now, luckily, this story does have a happy ending, but not without a lot of heartache along the way. And I want to share with you what I learned about this exact situation so that if you have a long-term care insurance policy in place, this doesn't happen to you. The backstory is my clients knew that this day was going to come. They started paying for this insurance policy in their 50s because they knew one day they were going to need it. They had been paying for this policy for years and years and years and years, roughly 30-ish years. When the time came that they started needing more physical assistance, they started evaluating assisted living facilities around town. They went and looked at them. They got tours. They looked at the pros and the cons. They had sample meals there, and they chose the place they liked the best. The plan was we were going to list their house for sale and use the proceeds from the sale of the house to pay for the assisted living community. However, all of a sudden one day they got a call from the community and they said, hey, we have an availability. You said you wanted a 2-bedroom apartment. We have one. It will be available on this date. Would you like it? And even though they had not packed up one single thing yet, they decided to do it. So in the space of about 30 days, they had an estate sale. They sold pots and pans and sheets and towels and dishes and silverware and glasses, furniture, patio furniture, lawnmowers, everything in the garage. They sold probably 90% of their worldly possessions at this estate sale, got a moving company, moved over to the assisted living community, and they were told by this insurance company that they had to pay for the first 90 days out of pocket before the insurance plan would kick in. They were not going to be reimbursed for these 90 days. So that was obstacle number one. We have to know, how much is this going to cost? Is it $5,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month? And you've got to pay 90 days of that out of pocket up front, where you are not going to be reimbursed for it. You are paying for that. Congratulations. So they did that. They moved. They were prepared to do that. They filled out the claim, which was then submitted to the long-term care insurance company. And then they waited and they waited and they waited. And I will never forget when my client called me and said, they just called me and they denied my claim. They said, they're not paying for it. So I went downstairs to the business office. I gave them 30 days notice. I don't know what we're going to do. The feeling of my heart just dropping to my stomach, and that was me. Imagine how they felt. It was the most awful news, because what were their options? They could move back into their empty house. They had nothing. They had a bed, a couple of chairs, a love seat, a tiny dinette set. That was it. Their clothes. That was it. They sold everything in their kitchen. They sold all of the other furniture. They were going to move back into a house that was mostly empty. or they were going to move into an apartment somewhere. They are in their 80s. They need physical assistance, which is why they went to assisted living in the first place. So how did this happen? How did this mix-up happen? Well, there were two reasons. Number one, the patient wanted to downplay the amount of assistance they really needed. They were proud, didn't want to seem like they really needed that much help, and basically just tried to make it sound like they didn't need as much help physically as they really did every single day. Then the insurance company called the community and got on the phone with someone and asked a million questions about how much care does this person need? We've got ADLs, activities of daily living. Do they need help bathing? Do they need help dressing? Do they need help walking? What do they need help with? And the person who got on the phone didn't really know this person well enough to give them accurate information and said, oh yeah, they're great. They're doing terrific. It's all good. So between the patient's self explanation of what they needed and what the community said, the insurance company said, I'm sorry, you don't need assisted living. You're probably ready for independent living, but the insurance policy that you have does not cover independent living. It only covers assisted living. So this is where the fine print matters. Before you file a claim, you have to know what is in that insurance policy. What do they cover? What will they not cover? Read the fine print. You have to know this up front so that when you say, all right, now is the time, we are ready for this, you do everything by the book. You do not want to have them deny your claim. You do not want to have that kind of stress when you're in your 70s, 80s, 90s. We want this to be, we submit the claim, it is approved, everybody lives happily ever after. The amount of assistance that the person needs has to be documented. It has to be in their file. The people at the community need to know exactly which ADLs they need assistance with on a daily basis, not occasionally, not even regularly, daily. What do they need help with every single day? And it has to be in the file so that when they communicate that to the insurance company, everyone is on the same page. So the first thing I did was start calling everybody I know who is in this space and say, can we challenge a denial? And the answer was yes, we could. And they told me exactly what we had to do and how we had to do it. And it was a lot of extra work for everybody involved, but we were able to thoroughly document exactly what this person needed help with on a daily basis. We had a new medical assessment done by the physician where they had to list all of the ADLs that the patient needed help with on a daily basis. The doctor had to write up more information about the symptoms and the problems and that they were a high fall risk and they had already fallen once in the parking lot and all of these things. We wrote a letter appealing their decision, saying these are all of the things that this person needs help with. This is why they are ready for assisted living, and this claim should not be denied. And then we waited. It was probably the longest 2 weeks of their life, just waiting to hear, were they going to change their mind or were they going to stick to their original decision? And then after having just gotten settled in, they're going to have to pack up all of their stuff and move again. And just when we thought, oh my gosh, I cannot stand the suspense any longer, we got a letter that said, approved. The policy that they had been paying for 30 years was finally going to kick in and do what it had intended to do all along, which was pay for their living expenses for the rest of their lives. But here's the part you need to know. The only reason we got this happy ending was because we were able to successfully challenge the denial letter. So if you're thinking about moving into assisted living, I need you to pull out that insurance policy and read it word for word, line by line, know exactly what is covered and what is not covered before you move, before you go into the community, before you start paying for it out of pocket, before you pay all of those moving expenses and have an estate sale where you sell all of your worldly possessions. You need to do all of that first so that something like this hopefully never happens to you. But how are you going to pay for assisted living in the first place? If selling the house is part of the plan, I want you to watch this video next, where we talk about coming up with this plan so that the house that has a ton of equity in it will be the way that you pay for your assisted living care.